Welcome back to the Incredible Machines podcast, where we sit down with incredible people doing incredible things. Today we sit down with Samantha Edwards, a marketing and advertising professional whose story is one of resilience and finding strength. We talk about the cancer fight and facing the unknown, staying present when the future feels uncertain, advertising and sharing stories that matter. So settle in as we dive deep into an episode filled with honesty, strength, and powerful lessons on life, work, family, and what it means to keep moving forward. Let's dive in with the incredible Sam Edwards. You worked on that lifeline. We have had great feedback on. That's an EO, entrepreneurs organization tool.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, I do it quite often actually. We do it once a year generally with EO, but I do it with my wife Lynn as often as we can. So it's been once every 2 years or whatever. And you actually think about stuff that you forgot.
Exactly, yeah. That's what I loved about doing it. I thought, when else do you actually sit down and reflect on your life like that? And it's super interesting also to see the highs and the lows. And I started thinking about other people's lifelines and thinking about how those first 20 years, I'm sure, have such a significant impact on how the rest of the lifeline goes. Because I was kind of thinking of those first 20 years and I couldn't find anything significant to say about my childhood. But I realized that that was because I had a very stable childhood, which I think is perfect. I think if you start out with a stable childhood, it sort of sets you up for success. And what I also found interesting about it was when I looked at the lows and considered whether those lows were in my control or out of my control. So, like, for example, one of my lows was a failed engagement, but that was something that I saw as being within my control because I made a poor decision. I made a bad relationship decision. But then when I came to the cancer, which was obviously the other significant low, that was something completely out of my control. So it was just interesting to look at it like that, what kind of control do we have over our lows and highs?
Do you Enneagram type, it, hey?
I do, yes.
And it is a?
8.
Is it? I didn't know you were an active controller, actually. That's interesting. So because you mentioned the word control.
Yes,
quite a bit. Yeah, I actually thought you were a 3 for some reason.
No, I'm an 8.
Yeah, okay, interesting. And born and bred in PE was a stable...
Born in Cape Town, but parents relocated to PE when I was very young, so I grew up in PE, did my schooling in PE. And I loved it. Lovely place to grow up, made great friends that I've still got today. Yeah.
And when did you leave and where did you go? Because I know you went to spend some time in the UK. We can go through that.
Yes,
but was it immediately after studying or how did that?
So finished my schooling in PE and then left the little old PE for the big city lights of Joburg. Which was certainly one of my highs, I would say, because, I was now independent and able to experience the world and studying advertising, which was something that I'd always wanted to get into. I can't remember if I ever told you the story about what made me want to get into advertising. It's something extremely shallow, nothing profound about it, but it all goes back to Melrose Place. I don't know if you remember the series Melrose Place. And there was a lady by the name of Amanda who was an advertising executive. And I used to watch her doing her advertising pitches. And I just thought, that is what I want to be. And from the age of 16, said to my mom, I want to do advertising. And that's what led me to AAA school in Joburg.
Okay, so you went. So you left to go study. You had family in Johannesburg, or?
Yes. So my aunt lived in Johannesburg. She's in the production industry. Has been her whole life, and she had her own production company at the time. So that then also enabled me to work part-time whilst studying and, in the industry that I wanted to be in.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So, and earning money, but also just the experience.
Exactly.
Is just critical? Do you feel that was a massive thing for you to get that experience while studying?
Yeah, I mean, whether it was critical or not, I don't know. But I think, just having that work ethic from early on, I think really helped. So I would study in the mornings and then I would get home, and my aunt's production house was actually in a little hut in the garden. That sounds weird, hut in the garden, but you know what I mean. So she had an office in one of those prefabs. So I would get back from my studies and then go straight to work for the afternoons. and then obviously do my assignments and all my studies after hours. So yeah, it got me used to, I think, working in that sort of high pace environment.
Okay, interesting, because what I was thinking, I mean, I worked throughout my studies, and I traveled a bit too, and worked, but like
Yeah.
but I wasn't in the category of what I was studying when I was working. I was gardening or
Yes,
construction, or
okay.
at home I was doing nightclub
Yeah,
bartending. I
yeah.
don't know, like, so it was very different from what I studied. Did you find that aligning with the actual work helped at all?
Yes, absolutely. So that I would agree with 100%. And I mean, I also did the after hours bartending and waitressing and all that kind of thing. But yes, I mean, throughout even my travels when I went to the UK, you know, a lot of people went to the UK and did different work types just to, you know, work and travel. But I immediately got into my career and went into another production company in Carnaby Street in London. So yeah, absolutely. I think working in the field that you want to go into definitely set me up for success.
And that UK, because I remember you talking about that, that UK job, was your aunt pivotal in getting you that job at all? It's like,
Not her directly, but my cousin.
okay.
So my entire sort of extended family, my aunt who's my mom's sister, all of her 4 kids are in some way in the advertising or production realm. So her eldest daughter, Chanel, was a producer. And the owner of the production company in London, which was called New Moon Productions, was shooting the 2004 Olympic bid film. So I think it was South Africa, Paris, and I think it might have been New York, who were all bidding to host the Olympic Games in 2004. So they all had to do their little, you know, video to promote the country, the host country. So she was shooting. I think it was for London, but she was shooting in South Africa. That's it. Sorry, it wasn't South Africa. It was London was one of the contenders to be the host, but the film that they were producing was being shot in South Africa. So through that, she met my cousin. And then when I said I'm going over to London, she said, "Oh, I've got this contact, Caroline Rowland." She was actually an ex-South African who'd been living in London for many years. And she got me in touch with her, and that's how I landed the job. So, yeah, I mean, that's actually one of the things when you asked about a quote or something that keeps coming up. I didn't give it to you at the time, but doing the Lifeline made me think of the one that really comes up for me time and time again in business is that it's not what you know, but who you know. Because I think almost all of the jobs that I've had, probably bar Conversation Lab, came about from having a connection and speaking to somebody. So, yeah, I think that
no, there was a recommendation. You got a recommendation on you at thing, but you came through. I think our search was better. I think you were applying at the Hardy Boys,
Yes,
and
that's
then
true.
we snatched you up.
Yes,
Yeah, and then
100%. Yeah.
we worked together for about how many
I
years?
think
Like
even
7 years.
longer. Yeah, 7 years.
Yeah. So, and then how long were you in the UK for?
I was in the UK for 8 years.
Okay, wow. And all production?
Not entirely. Started out in production, probably the first 4 years in production, and then went to a B2B PR agency based in a little town called Farnham in Surrey.
And preference? Did you have which was your preference? The PR and production, they're quite different, but
I would say production was my preference. But, you know, so having studied at AAA school, it was always my ambition to go into a traditional advertising agency environment. And for some or other reason, that didn't happen in my London years. I think probably the move to Surrey had something to do with it. So I was living sort of in a very kind of remote little area, and this particular production PR agency, it was called White Oaks Consultancy. I remember you used to laugh at that name, White Oaks, in the South African context.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'd found them, and yeah, it was just an opportunity to be in an agency environment. You know, it wasn't advertising. So yeah, I mean, it was enjoyable. It was a good experience.
And you did get to travel a fair bit, because one of the stories that I know of is
yeah. So I'd say 100% that was one of my highs in my life, was my time in the UK. Purely, like, one of the big reasons was because of the travel opportunities, weekends away, ski trips, you know, holidays in the Med. It was really, really awesome. But yes, I think one of the stories which talks to my character of sort of being this eternal optimist and just always believing that things will work out was when we went on a ski weekend. I think it was where we were going, somewhere, Chamonix, I think it was. And we had to go via Switzerland to get to Chamonix. And as I was standing in the passport queue waiting, to go through into Switzerland, I looked at my friend and I said, I didn't actually check my visa before we came. I really hope it's still valid. And then, because when you lived in the UK, you would have to get a Schengen visa to go across to Europe, and they would always sort of renew them every year or so. But the longer you'd been in the UK, the longer your visa was usually valid for. So in my mind, before we travelled, it did occur to me, but I just thought, it's a year visa, I'll be good. And then, true as God, looked down at the visa and saw that it had expired. Anyway, close to going through, and my friend's like, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm just going to have to accept that, I'm not going to be on this ski trip. And it was actually the last European holiday that I was going to be having before returning to South Africa. It was towards the end of my stay. So I was like, I'm just going to have to cut my losses. But you know what? I'm just going to try anyway. I'm just going to go through, show them my passport, not going to say anything and see what happens. And yeah, passport control looked at the passport, stamped my visa, and off I went.
Oh, they didn't pick it up?
Didn't say a word, no.
Okay, so you didn't actually have to wiggle away.
No, I didn't have to wiggle my way out.
Okay,
no.
That's interesting. I thought you never shared that much with us. I think it was the part that we knew was the negotiate. We were like, oh wow.
No.
We knew Sam. So shorthand for Sam is like she's the type of person that can get through the border without a passport.
Yeah.
That's what. If you need stuff done urgently and get it over the line, that's
yes.
Pull Sam into the project immediately.
Yeah.
She'll get it done.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was towards the end of your trip. Was there anything else? I see a big dip in was that back in South Africa, or was that while you were there?
The big dip was the failed relationship. So I did fall in love with the wrong person whilst traveling. That's actually what led me to Surrey. He was in the army, in the British Army. So he lived in a little town called Aldershot. And thought I'd met the man of my dreams. Got engaged, everything was sort of working out as I wanted it in my life timeline, because I thought I always wanted to be engaged and married before I was 30. And then unfortunately the relationship didn't work out, which was, looking back now, it's nothing in my life, but at the time it was a huge, huge knock. I remember being, very, very sad. It was the first time that I was truly heartbroken. And then I'd felt that it kind of messed with all my perfect life plans, because now I was 30 and getting old, with a failed engagement and, not knowing where to next and where would I, how would I now find somebody?
Yeah, so the active controller, the 8 that plans everything, has everything, production and PR, and has it all planned and mapped out. Suddenly it wasn't fitting the mold.
Yeah, exactly.
What did you do?
There's
no Tinder, guys. There's no Bumble. There's no.
There wasn't. So shortly after, not shortly after, I think immediately I thought, it's time for me to go back home. Okay. I think I wanted the support structures and that I had back home, but I was about a year away from getting my naturalization. So I decided that I would stay one more year so that I could get the British passport, because, that was a big deal for me. I stuck it out for another year and then decided to go back home to Port Elizabeth, which, again, something that wasn't really in my life plan, particularly from a career perspective, because, if you want to be in advertising, you're not going to make it in PE is what I thought. But I thought, let me just go home to where my support structure is for a while. And when I was looking around for opportunities in Port Elizabeth, my mother had said to me, oh, have you heard about this new agency, Boomtown? And at the time, they were sort of very up and coming, and one of the only agency in PE that was sort of making it on a national scale. So they had Castle Milk Start as one of their clients, a lot of local brands too, but they were really quite well respected. So I got in touch with them. Actually remembered when doing my Lifeline that I had that interview whilst in London. So again, that sort of active controller. I wanted to make sure that I was going to go home and have a job to go to, and then got the job offer whilst I was in London, and then thought, okay, well, this is the perfect opportunity to go back home.
It's interesting. Just before we get to Boomtown and the PE leg, before we met, like that in the UK, when obviously you've had your dream shattered, like your dream life that you had, white picket fence, all drawn out and mapped out, shattered at the time. We know differently now, and we'll get into that towards the latter part of your story. But the need to come home and be around like mom, dad, like family.
It's
quite interesting, like as a immediate impulse. To go, I need mom and dad, I need that. Like actually it's very dark to go here quickly, so I'll just stay for a second. But the George Floyd, that activist, or that incident that happened, all the activism that happened after that and that sort of stuff. And he got choked out and then suffocated, and there was a whole debacle. We won't get into the politics of it exactly here, but because it's another podcast, another show altogether. But this big, like aged man, like he's an adult, very much an adult, when his last words were calling for his mom, and this was one of the saddest things I ever heard. Like, so when you under those sort of something happens in your life like that, that's you call mom first. Crazy.
100%.
Not crazy, but
No, and I must say, talking about moms, one of the questions you asked me was, who is my incredible machine? And I thought about it, and I thought, maybe it sounds a little bit cliched to go to your mom, but honestly, she really is for me. I think she's such an amazing woman, and she's such a strong woman, and she's always been there for me, through absolutely everything. So, talking of that, the minute she heard about what had gone wrong in the relationship, she was straight on an aeroplane to London to come and support me. And she's had a hard life. I think she fell pregnant at age 18, which back then was very, very taboo, and was then forced into a marriage, which didn't last long. My brother's father, left when he was, I think, 1 year old, leaving my mom on her own. She then had her mom pass away, I think, about 3 years later. She was very, very close to my mom, to her mom. And tell stories about having to walk to work with this little boy, and she had to make ends meet, and that was something throughout her life that she was able to do without much support. My dad, unfortunately, wasn't the typical sort of breadwinner of the family, so my mom was forced to do everything. And we always talk about how we think she knitted money somehow, because she didn't earn a lot of money, but somehow managed to give me, through my upbringing, like absolutely everything that I needed. I never felt that we were, financially worse off than any of my friends. I was probably a little bit spoiled, I think. My brother would say I was spoiled. I think he got a lot less than what I got, I guess, because I came 9 years later. But I just so appreciate everything, everything that she did for her kids. She managed to put me through university. I still don't know to this day how she did that, where she found the money to get that right. But that's obviously what enabled, me to set myself up for my career. So just on the topic of moms, that's exactly why I think, it'll always be my mom that, the first person I call when something goes wrong.
And okay, so she flew to the UK, and that probably would have helped to get you through the next year, because otherwise you probably were coming home. So she just like that. She just flew there to look after you quick while help you recover, and then
for sure.
decide on your next thing.
For sure. Sometimes a little bit how can I say, overwhelming is the wrong word, but my mom's also a very emotional person, probably a lot more emotional than I am. So she would tend to then get very upset, and she would be the one in tears, and I would be like thinking to myself, God, Mom, I'm going through this. Can you just relax,
Yeah.
So sometimes don't always, always appreciated the help, but sometimes it got a little bit much. But the intention was there.
So there's actually something that makes me think of Scott a little bit. I don't know, mention Scott, your husband,
Yeah.
and something you said to me while you were sick, and he was dealing with, you were going through it, and he was dealing with it, and I think you mentioned something similar. So maybe we'll touch on that, because it is interesting for audiences to note, like, hopefully they never go through that cancer experience, but you're going to be, if you haven't already, you're going to be touched by cancer in some way. Like someone is going to get sick, someone close to you.
Yeah.
And it's quite difficult to not be able to do anything, and to be, and the first to be able to do anything, or to be able to like just have to sit and listen and watch someone else go through this thing that you have no control over. You can't do anything of, and like especially being, it's actually like the deficit of being not deficit's not the right word, but the male. Is we're not, vulnerability doesn't come easily to us. Emotions don't come easily to us. So when you mentioned to him, you mentioned something about Scott taking on a lot, and like you were like, I'm going through this, Scott, and I was like, but I just was. It was admirable, obviously the way you were handling, but the way he was so invested, and so like, are there similarities there in emotional?
Yeah, yes and no. I would say that with Scott was almost the opposite. In that I guess Scott's similar to me in his optimistic outlook in life.
Yeah.
So I think he also just believes that things will work out. So I would say in Scott's case, of course, he was hugely supportive through the cancer, but I felt at times didn't feel the severity of it.
He just thought you were going to be fine, and you were dealing with it.
He kind of just knew I would be okay. And, he's also the type of person that always says, let's only worry about what's happening right now. Like, just we take it step by step.
Yeah.
And that was quite hard for me. Well, it would be hard, of course, for anybody with a cancer diagnosis. You looking mortality in the face, and you can't help but think, where is this going to end? Am I going to survive it, etc. Whereas, he didn't. Yeah, he just didn't. To me, I'm sure maybe he did internally, but to me, he wasn't sort of understanding the severity of it. And that might be what you were thinking.
Yeah, that's what I was. Is actually the
opposite.
The opposite, because, and I was like, but that's because he doesn't want. That's terrifying.
Yes.
The future is terrifying because potentially you aren't in it.
Yeah.
And you want to plan that out. Like he didn't want to, and it was because we're not allowed to be scared or vulnerable or anything like that as males.
Exactly.
So I was like,
but
we'll get there. Just on your mom, I think it's great that you've had that anchor, and she's your incredible machine, so we won't have to broach that later. So now you came back to PE. Did you move in with your parents?
Yes,
you came back?
I did initially.
You didn't have a job, so did you have a job immediately because you were interviewing already?
Yes, I did have a job immediately. So I think I moved back home for about 6 months, and then actually bought my first property at age 30. I bought a little flat and then moved into the flat. Always my intention not to stay in PE. I think I always knew that it was a stopgap. I didn't actually think I would be there for as long as I was. I then ended up spending 4 years in Port Elizabeth. And another one of my highs actually came during that time, which I only thought about this morning, not yesterday on the plane when I was going for a jog on the promenade. I said, I haven't touched on any of my sporting achievements, I say in inverted commas, because I'm not a professional athlete by any means. But PE is home of the Ironman, so you almost can't live in PE and be active and not want to do an Ironman at some point. So
it was just this last weekend.
Yes, it was. So I haven't yet done the full Ironman, but I did. I got involved in triathlons and then did 3 back-to-back Ironman 70.3 events. First one in East London, and then the next 2 in Durban. That was definitely a high point of my life. Just the camaraderie, the friendships you make. It becomes kind of all-consuming, I would say, when you do get into something like that. Every single weekend is an early morning cycle and run and swim, I love that stage of my life. But then eventually coming back to the relationships now and my plan, I was getting getting on in my mind. I was getting older and older, getting closer to 35, which back then seemed old. Now we know differently. Still hadn't met anybody. And I just realized I'm not going to meet anybody in PE because in PE, most people who've stayed in PE get married very early. And, you know, by that stage, most of my friends had teenage kids. So I was definitely lagging behind. But yeah, I realized this wasn't going to be the place. And then, I decided it was time to move. The intention was always to move to Cape Town, but in my job search, why did I even consider Durban? I'm not sure if it was even on my radar or I think it was. I had a friend who lived with me in the UK. And she had married a Durbanite, and I'd been to visit her. That was it. I'd been on a business trip to Durban, and I'd visited her, and I thought, oh, this is actually quite a cool place. You know, maybe I should extend the job search to Durban. And that's when I came across the Hardy Boys, started searching for opportunities there, and then Conversation Lab came up. Saw there was a job on offer, and then
we got you. So I remember we got you, and the first thing you came to our event, we had a leadership weekend away, and you were still in your fitness thing because you were waking up
I forgot
early.
about
It was
that.
like one of the first leadership away events I ever did.
Yeah.
We had Christian out from the UK and that sort of
Yes, I
stuff. It was
remember that.
awesome.
Yeah,
And Ed,
Yes.
and Sam was waking up in the sparrow fart, we would say, and then going for runs, and not cycles, but runs, I think.
No, I think I took the bike with me as well.
Okay, cool.
I
Yeah, you had
remember
the bike,
that.
runs, cycles, and we were in the Berg somewhere, I think,
Yeah.
and we were going, Sam was doing, we were like, who's this? The person that's just newly into our management team and now doing this stuff like that. The highlights before we transition to Durban, any highlights at Boomtown? Because I think it was an award-winning agency. It is it was a great place to work. I think I don't know if it's still booming.
Yeah, it is still booming actually.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I see quite a lot about them.
Oh, amazing.
But yes, I did go to the Lurries whilst with Boomtown. I'm trying to think what we were nominated for. I think it was one of Senzo's campaigns. Senzo then also worked for Conversation Lab. I remember it was a company called Agreco who do, I think, like power solutions. So obviously at the time when we still do, but back then when we were having all the power outages in South Africa, they had temporary power solution, and we'd created this little it was actually a direct mailer, and it was this little box that when you tried to flick the on switch or the off switch, it would like jump back on. So it was a very clever way of communicating the message always on. So I think that was the campaign that was being nominated for. But yeah, going to the Lurries was probably one of my highlights.
Was the Lurries in Durban at the time or Cape Town?
It was in Cape Town at the time.
And then it came to Durban for a while there since.
Yeah.
Okay, then you came to us in Durban.
Yes.
And we worked for a good number of years on various accounts. I think also I used your example. I used Sam as an example of how badly I can handle someone's phobia. I think my relative autism kicks in with phobias, like the of flying specifically, and being on a flight with Sam, and she's clawing my arm, and she's afraid that the plane is going to come crashing down. And I just very practical. I don't understand phobia. Unfortunately, I don't have one that I know of yet, and it doesn't make sense. And that's the part about phobias that I understand. They're not rational. So, but you can't attack an irrational thing with a rational response. But I didn't know that at the time. I thought it was very clever. And I remember going, Sam, like, just there's nothing we can do right now. When we walked onto the plane, we gave our lives over to the pilot. The only thing we can do is we can sit down and watch what happens now. Any response other than that would only attribute negatively to the situation. So we can only have negative impact by doing anything other than sitting down and just playing our part in this.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's brilliant. Like, that's it. So much relief. We don't have to do anything. Our lives are, hey, that's totally relieving. Not relieving at all. I think you like hit me and you were like, no, that's not helpful at all.
Yeah.
Are you still
No,
scared of
funny
flying?
enough, that was like a strange phase, and it's not something I've always been. Prior to that, I'd obviously traveled back and forth between South Africa and the UK multiple times, and all of our travels whilst in the UK, I never had a fear of flying. I almost think that a fear of flying comes with the more flights that you do, because you start to experience more and more and kind of know what can go wrong. And so, yeah, I went through that strange phase of having that fear. And it's not a fear of flying per se. I mean, like, some people can't get onto an airplane. They just don't like the thought of it. If it's smooth sailing, I'm hundreds, then I have no fear. But it's the minute I feel the turbulence I start wondering, like, is this just turbulence, or is the plane going to go down? But yeah, I think I've kind of gotten over that. I'm not as bad as I was during that phase.
Okay, that's interesting.
Maybe because I've had to really look death in the face. I don't know if that's got
is it
to do
because of
with
that?
it.
Do you think it is that? Like,
Could be. I mean, look, I haven't done a lot of flying in the last few years. I think also with starting to work remotely and all of that kind of thing. I used to do a lot of flying for business trips. But funny enough, yesterday on the plane coming to Durban, there was some turbulence as we were coming down, and I did immediately like grip Scott's hand and go like, "Oh, what's happening here?" But yeah, then I think I did actually, the cancer came into my mind, and I thought, this is just turbulence. Nothing to be scared of.
I was hoping I hadn't triggered anything that I was going to do and try be rationalizing it, because again, I don't like, it's one of those things when my wife is terrified of geckos, and I just don't I don't get it. Like, I just don't understand.
No, that one I can't understand.
Yeah, but the way you feel about that,
what is it?
or a cockroach or whatever, like when people are terrified of things like that, that's how I feel about people being scared of flying. Like, I just like this. I just don't like. I don't compute. It doesn't make sense to me, because I have literally decided, like, I'm going to be headlines, and that'll be the thing. There's nothing I can do. There's no positive impact, and then I'm managed to walk away from it from there. So I go, only negative impact I can have. Right here from this from onset here. So like, if I didn't get on the plane, that's a different story. And I have heard of people not getting on planes, even falling asleep and missing their plane, and then the plane going down.
Really?
I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
And then I asked them if they watched Final Destination, because that would then terrify me, and now I'm passing that fear over to them. Maybe that's what I do. We worked together for a while. I think we had great highlights. Again, Sam was the fittest person in the office often. I think we had this, we would offer, we've got 3 things now in the agency now at Tim Africa. That is, we work with mind, body and soul. The mind pillar is learning. We're always learning. We always do. We're in newsrooms still. We do in the morning now, but we do it every morning with our stand-up. So we're continuously learning, and the thing is, because we want people that actively learn and do lifelong learning. And it's just, those are the type of people we want to be around, rather than people that just don't want to learn. And then the soul thing, we actually, the first time I've got it right, I think, has been this start of this agency, which has been great, where we work with a deaf school around the corner, and we've gone and done manual labor at the school, and we'll go do some training on AI and stuff like that with them too. But we're actually getting out of the office and doing some physical labor and doing some community service. So that's the soul part. That's awesome. And it's all double as team building, because we want people that are smart and want to be smarter, and we want people that give a damn, and because we give a damn and that thing. And then the health thing we're looking at now is actually the third one we haven't got right yet, but we're trying to coordinate with a boxing coach around the corner, where we can offer free boxing for the team, and then they can do that, because similar to Discovery and the medical aids that offer you free gym, it's not out of the goodness of their heart. They never want to hear from you ever again. They want you to pay the fees and never call them, because people that go to gym are usually healthier.
Yes.
And
yes.
they get less sick. People don't like being sick, and employers don't like their employees being sick. So it's like a win-win. It's
Yeah,
beautiful,
yeah.
symbiotic thing that can happen. So I think we did that, and then we had challenges, and these are not our ideas. We've begged, borrowed, stolen from wherever, but we actually had like a challenge. I think we had like a CrossFit challenge where we had this 6-week thing, and it was like there was like $5,000 up at the end of it, and this is an agency that we did, and we did and it was like a percentage of growth, like so your lift, your back squat and your front squat, and then an overall run, you had to beat it by a certain amount and that sort of stuff, and then there was I don't actually won the whole thing like that. I don't know, because you were already so fit. I don't think there was drastic improvements.
Yeah.
But you won the last man standing. We had a contest on the last day. It was like last man standing.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. I really liked that.
Yeah.
Are you still keeping fit and
Yes,
healthy
I
and stuff?
am. I actually just did 2 Oceans Half Marathon 2 weekends ago.
Okay.
And I was super proud of myself with that one. I have done multiple half marathons, but I mean, that was 6 months after my second surgery to remove the second tumor that they found. So I thought that was a pretty good achievement.
Yeah.
And I still remember actually when I had my recurrence 6 months ago, I was busy training for a different half marathon, and I'd sort of just started ramping up my distances. I was running with a friend, and the weekend before I found out, we'd done a 14K run. And then the next Sunday, I was walking up and down ICU, and I actually said to the nurse who was helping me, I'm like, last weekend I was running 14Ks. This weekend I'm walking up an ICU room, and it's insane how life can just change in an instant,
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's where the next stop is when you're, because you got, okay, no, let's go. I think before we get there, the marriage, I think looks like a highlight of the kids and Scott.
And interestingly, what I realized yesterday doing my lifeline is that all the pivotal moments in my life were at Conversation Lab. So that's quite interesting. So you were there for all of the key things that happened in my life. So yes, of course, then meeting Scott. So back to leaving PE to find a husband. I did find a husband in Durban whilst planning a move to Cape Town. If you remember, we had Environ Skincare as one of our accounts. So I think 6 months into being in Durban, Conversation Lab started talking about opening a Cape Town office, and I immediately put up my hand and said, that's where I want to be, I'll go. And I think it might have been you, John, who actually didn't want me to go as soon as I wanted to go. I think you might have said, like, can we give it till January? I think it might have been in the September or the October, and you'd said, can we give it till January or whatever it was? And I'd said, okay, no problem. And then happened to meet my husband, Scott, just before. I think I met him in the January of 2016, and then all the plans changed. So I then stayed in Durban, where I ended up spending the next 8 years of my life. I got married, obviously a huge highlight. John was also there to save my now husband from near death on his bachelor's party.
It sounds like I was responsible for keeping you here long enough to meet him, and then it sounds like I know that I went to the Bulls party, and it was with a whole bunch of guys out in the Berg somewhere, in the Midlands somewhere, and it was like as Bulls party as you can get. It was it was a lot of fun, but there was just a lot of alcohol involved,
as it would be,
as obviously it would be, but
boys.
like and then
still that way, by the way.
I woke up on the Saturday morning of day one, because it got 2 nights, I think, and it's like my sister, I kidnapped my brother-in-law and threw him a Bulls party, and then that was in Johannesburg, and then Durban we had a Bulls party. He deserved 2. Yeah. So I said, but so Scott had the 2 nights, and he I walked through at about 9 a.m. on Saturday morning, and checking everyone, and everyone started drinking again, actually, or it continued, and for some reason I wasn't in that frame. I'm not saying that I never did that or anything like that, but for this particular instance, I was not in that same frame, and I said to happened upon Scott, and he was carrying on already, or he might not have been carrying on, but he was still suffering from the night before. And I took one look at his face, and I was like, Scott, what happened to your lip? Like, and he was like, "Oh no, I bumped it." Or he had like some mumbled story about how, and I was like, "Yeah, look, you need stitches there. I can see it."
Yeah.
And they cried. Him and whoever was next to him was also like as inebriated, and it was like they tried to laugh it off, and I was like, "No, I'm pretty confident you need. I'm not a doctor, but like I work in marketing, but I'm pretty confident you need stitches."
Yeah.
So like, someone else that was more sober than the crew around came through and said, "Yeah, dude, I'm not sober enough to drive, but you need stitches." So unfortunately, I was, and I took him to get stitches. 2 weeks out before your wedding.
Yeah, and
So
that
yeah, I
was
think
the one thing I'd said. You do not come back with an injury. True as
yeah,
God.
no injuries allowed for the money maker and the photos for the wedding and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And then Sunday we got back, and he got back with stitches in his face. To Sam, and I think I got a phone call or a message just going, "What happened?" Like sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was awesome. It was so awesome to be a part of it, and like such a great guy, like you said.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know that because I think I didn't really want you to go too quickly there, and I often pulled back on things where I thought like, no, let's not rush this because we need to make sure that there's handovers and there's all kinds of things and the practical stuff that just often never got looked. Now we'll figure it out on the fly. So I'm glad you got that, and then you got married, and there was the two girls already before the diagnosis, huh?
Yes, 2 girls before the diagnosis. Yeah, so I think very shortly after getting married, got married in 2018, 2020 we had our first daughter Emma. And then 2021 had our second daughter, Kate. So 2 little girls in close succession. And of course, one of, the highest moment of my life. You'll know, being a dad, how that continues to be the high point in your life is having kids and watching them grow. But yeah, then in 2022, I was trying to work out how old Emma would have been. And she was only 2.5 when I was diagnosed with the cancer. So Emma was 2.5. Kate had just turned 1. Yeah, and I mean, that just huge shock. I mean, I never ever would have expected something like that. In fact, we'll come to it, but I'll get to it now, because one of the questions you say is, what piece of advice would you give your 16-year-old self? And I've got a couple, but one of them linked to my experience was expect the unexpected, because, it's just something that you can't fathom at age, what was I think I'd just turned 40, 42, whatever it was. 2 young kids. Finally, I had the life that I'd always dreamt of. My career was going well, married, 2 beautiful kids, and then, like, boom, a cancer diagnosis, which I was fortunate enough. Well, when I say fortunate, I think also talks to my personality, and that I've always been very health conscious. So I've always been very aware, maybe sometimes a little bit too much so. I wouldn't say that I'm overly anxious about my health, but if I feel something's off, I always get it investigated. Whereas other people, I think, a lot of people say, I'll put that off, I'll leave that. So I'd been experiencing some quite nondescript symptoms. The most prevalent, I would say, was the fatigue. So I was constantly feeling tired. But whenever I spoke to anybody about it, including, I'd actually seen my endocrinologist, because I also have a thyroid condition, which I've had my whole life. So I saw her and I said, this fatigue just doesn't feel right to me. And she said, no, of course you're going to be fatigued. You're a busy working mom. You got 2 girls under the age of 2. She ran a bunch of blood tests. Everything was fine. She said the fatigue is like 100% down to, your current situation, which made sense. But then I also started experiencing quite frequent diarrhea. But again, put that down to, maybe it's a little bit of IBS. And also at the time in Durban, there was a lot of issues with our water quality. There probably still is. And a friend of mine had been to a gastroenterologist to get tested because she'd been having some stomach pains. She'd had a colonoscopy, and it turned out that she had an E. coli, that bacteria. So she said to me, I'll give you the details. Why don't you just book a colonoscopy for peace of mind? It's probably something like that. So that's what I did. Called up a gastro, got booked in. went in, of course, never expecting the result that I then had. Came out of it, and the doctor said to me, "I'm really sorry, but we found a large tumor, or a large mass. We're going to biopsy it and send it away for testing." But actually said to me, "But don't worry." He said, "To me, this doesn't present as being cancerous, but we'll just get it tested anyway." And he said to me, "Either way, you'll have to have a surgery to remove it because it's a large tumor." But he was very reassuring. So as much as I left that day feeling shocked and scared about the fact that I would have to have a surgery, it still didn't occur to me, or I didn't really believe that this thing might come back cancerous. It was almost just a checkbox, the biopsy side of things. Still to this day a little bit annoyed with that doctor, because I don't think that he should have been quite so sort of, sure of himself. But anyway, he then called me a day later or 2 days later, and he said, "I'm really sorry, but this is cancerous." But again, quite reassuring. He said, surgery will likely be a cure. He said you can liken this to females will resonate, but when you have a irregular pap smear. So you get an irregular result, they scrape a little bit away and everything's fine. So he said, think of this like that, So I said, okay, but obviously hearing the word cancer, your mind goes to all sorts of dark places. Then had to wait for a consult with the surgeon, which I think came quite quickly. We're very fortunate in South Africa with our medical care. That's one thing that I've realized. So yeah, very quickly then got the consult with the surgeon, who spoke me through the procedure to remove the tumor. He gave me quite a lot of assurance too, because he said, he does this type of thing every day. It's very straightforward. Obviously, it's a big surgery. Of course it is. But he again felt that, everything would be fine. He gave me stories of other people who'd, been through the same. Explained that what they'll do is when they remove the tumor, they then remove any surrounding lymph nodes that they see.
Gave you the story about the lymph nodes?
Yeah. So they would have to remove any surrounding lymph nodes that they found, and then they would test those, and that would then give them an indication of whether the cancer had gone anywhere else. But he said, he actually told me a story about a girl that he'd operated on the week before who'd had the same thing, and there'd been like no positive nodes, and she was now being discharged, and that was that. Surgery was the cure. So again, that was my hope for myself, and given all of the sort of positive outlooks that all the doctors had given me, I was pretty sure that that would be my story too. So the surgery was the scary part, but I didn't really think beyond that. So then went in, had the surgery. I will say that was probably one of the most harrowing experiences of my life. The surgical side of it. I was petrified on the day that I went in, feeling very, very anxious, and then I think had to wait something like 6 hours to go in. And I must actually mention somebody by the name of Leonie, who is somebody that at the time I didn't know from a bar of soap, but she was somebody who ran with my husband, Scott, who's an avid Comrades runner. And she happened to be in the medical industry giving, selling, not selling, but what's the instrumentation that surgeons use in their procedures. She was the rep for those instruments. And when she heard that I was having the surgery with Dr. Kessie Naidu, who was the surgeon, she said to Scott that she works closely with Dr. Naidu, so she would ask if she could scrub in and be there. Sorry, I don't know why I'm getting emotional.
It's fine.
And I didn't think I'd get emotional when I speak about it. Sorry, John.
Nothing.
I always laugh at Americans on documentaries. And I say to Scott, why do these fucking Americans cry every time they talk? It's so annoying. And now I'm doing it. Anyway. Yeah, so... so back to Leonie. She scrubbed in for the surgery.
Do you want to hug?
No, it's fine. No, I didn't expect.
It was out of the blue. It was very abrupt.
Yeah.
But there's a lot here. So
Yeah.
don't-
No, I was just thinking of like the kindness of people. You know, she didn't know me from a bar of soap, and scrubbed in to be there when I was waiting to go. You know, like when you go into that, I call it the holding area. I don't know if you've ever had a surgery, but when you go from your room to the sort of like interim area before you go into surgery, and that's like a scary place because when you're in the room, you've got, you know, you can have family with you and doctors and all that kind of thing, but there you're kind of just lying there by yourself. So she just came and like sat with me and said, "You're going to be okay, everything's going to be fine." And I just thought it was like just such an amazing show of kindness from somebody who, you know, there was no reason for her to do that, you know. So yeah, now actually quite good. Well, when I say good friends with her, Scott's continued to run with her, so I see her quite frequently, and yeah, she's a very special person. Yeah, but anyway, so
Is that when? Sorry, as I came and saw you in Gateway Hospital, and I think you had a stent here or something as well. Was this that time?
Yes, exactly, and that was something.
So
that
remember, you looked very sick when I saw you.
Yes,
Actually,
yes.
it was
Yeah.
very traumatic.
It was traumatic, and funny enough, that was one of the things that I was most scared of, because they'd come and they'd told me that they were going to put this tube in, and I don't know why that freaked me out so much. It was just this thought of having like a pipe through one of my major veins, but she actually reassured me that that was going to be all fine and it was very safe and all of that kind of thing. Anyway,
Why do you think? Why do you think she did it? Like you said, you there's no reason. She must have a reason for it. What would you suppose that is?
I think she's just an incredibly kind person.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't think of. I mean, she had nothing to gain from it. Absolutely nothing to gain. It just, you know, it just so happened that, yeah, she had the means to be there and thought that I would need the support. So, yeah. Wow, you look like you think there's something.
No,
profound.
it's interesting. Just listening to the language you said, the gains, like the part she, I don't know if maybe because she's a medical rep, you think that the sales part of it is something. I think being there was just it is incredible that she would just offer that time, energy, and attention to be there.
Yes, yeah.
But you don't understand it, almost dismissively. So you're like, that's what yeah. So just the way you're speaking of her, and your emotion, you suddenly drop, like you suddenly burst there. There was no, like, I didn't see your eyes change.
No, I know. So it was so unexpected to even me. I think it was.
So it's a person that obviously had a massive impact. I've never heard of her before.
Yes,
and I just want to, credit with a bit of time. I think you have done a due diligence on like spending time with her and saying how incredible she is. That's. I mean, we talked about why you get invited on the show, and it comes from an experience that I had actually in one of our Cape Town trips. But what I won't go through the experience, but it's been talked about in other episodes. But what I realized is that there's some people that can walk into a room and can change the room. And it sounds like that's and you are one of those people for me, for sure, and for a lot of the team that I've worked with you, and that's like that you give so much to your team, and they aspire. I mean, like Chantal, for instance, I could just see being a mini me, like little wanting to learning so much from you. The team do that, but then there's the people that they're almost like angels.
Yes, exactly.
They walk around and they're just
100%, 100%.
So generally, the being able to change a room and doing it at scale is lots of hours of work. It doesn't just happen. People can't just walk into the room and change the room. They have to have done the work. And it sounds like she just does the work. So Leonie. Thank you, Leonie.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that sudden emotion, of course, the kindness of Leonie, but I think maybe it was just like going back to that place, you know, that place of that fear, you know.
Yeah.
Of the unknown.
Now, I remember seeing you you just come out of surgery, but this is the person that was doing the half Ironman and winning.
Exactly.
Beating everyone in the room for last man standing. So it was quite a a jolt, a difficult thing to see. It would be difficult on your family too.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, then coming back to post-surgery, so probably also the worst 48 hours of my life was the Friday night because I think I had the surgery on the Friday afternoon and then had to wait the weekend for the results of the biopsies. So that was obviously, the biggest concern now, was I going to be all clear? And then also just extreme levels of pain. I think I hadn't expected the surgery to be as difficult because I'd had 2 C-sections in the prior 2 years. And I because this was keyhole surgery, I thought, well, how bad can it be? I've had a C-section where they cut through muscles and can't be any worse than that. But yeah, I don't actually know what makes it that much worse. I think it's probably the fact that they've fiddled with all your insides and that kind of thing. But yeah, it was not pleasant the first 2 nights in ICU. And ICU is also a very scary place. If you haven't been in ICU before, all of the beeping, and I used to hate the nights, and for some reason I didn't like the night shift nurses. They kind of seemed a little bit incapable, and you kind of think my life's in these people's hands. Anyway, so eventually then on the Monday morning, they came through. I think it was only the Monday afternoon when the doctor came through with the results, and I'd already played every scenario in my mind, and thought I'm going to look at his facial expression when he comes in. Will that give me any clues as to what he's seen? And then I could immediately see when he walked into the room, and he just said, I'm really sorry, but we got 10 lymph nodes, and 5 out of the 10 have tested positive. So the staging that they give you is based on how many lymph nodes test positive. So if I think anything under 5 would have been, no, how does it work? I think more than 5 means a stage 3, because it's spread. Whereas I think because obviously, when cancer metastasizes, it's through the lymph that it metastasizes. So luckily in my case, it hadn't gone any further. So it was in the lymph nodes, and it had gone through the colon wall, which made it a stage 3B. So when I heard that, I also just thought, my God, because up until this point, I didn't know anything about cancer. I had an uncle who had passed away of a brain cancer many, many years ago. But other than that, I'd never been directly touched by cancer. So when you hear stage 3, I just kind of thought, well, stage 3 is one step closer to stage 4, which stage 4 to me is death, And then immediately you start thinking about chemotherapy and, oh my God, I'm going to lose my hair and all of that kind of thing. Anyway, I had an oncologist come and see me very soon after I got the news. And I still remember one of the things she said to me, which was, Sam, I want you to know there is life after this. So that was really reassuring. She said, yes, you're going to have chemotherapy. She said the good news is that you probably won't lose your hair. So for colon cancer, the chemo drugs that they give you don't cause hair loss. It was also one of the things I spoke about a lot in my blog, is that I didn't know that to me, chemo was the drug. To me, chemo was chemo. I didn't realize that chemo is a collective name for different drugs that attack the cancer. So hence why some chemo drugs don't cause hair loss and others do.
Okay.
So yeah, that was reassuring for me, that I wouldn't have to lose my hair. Of course, not the be all and the end all, but I think it is, something quite sensitive for women. So yeah, then got discharged from the hospital, and then I think about a month later, they want to obviously give you time to recover from the surgery. So a month later started my chemo journey. I think something important to mention here is that post-diagnosis, I made the decision that I wasn't going to go back to work. I know a lot of people are forced to work during chemo because they may not have the financial means. I think a lot of people actually like the distraction. I've got a friend at the moment going through similar, and she actually loves work because it takes her mind off it. But having been in such a stressful environment, advertising as an industry is highly stressful and pressured. I just decided for myself that I didn't need that pressure whilst trying to, get better from this cancer. So thank God I had income protector. One piece of advice I would give anybody: if you don't have it, get it, because as I say, expect the unexpected. You know, if you can't work, you want to have the financial means to be able to, you know, take the time off or whatever the case may be. So, and I actually think it was through Conversation Lab that I had that income protector. So that allowed me to then stop working, still earn the same money, but focus on my healing. So I'm very, very happy that I did that. And then from there, I must say that my actual chemo journey was way more manageable than I ever expected it to be. You know, again, if you don't know anything about cancer and you hear chemo, you have this vision of, you know, like spending all day hugging a toilet bowl. But it's actually, I think there's been so many advancements, and the anti-nausea drugs that they give you, if you know, if you take them when you're supposed to take them, it helps tremendously with the nausea. I do think that being a strong, sort of fit, active person played a big part in how well I coped with the chemo. And again, even with my second surgery, which we'll come to, I mean, my healing time after the surgical was remarkable, if I do say so myself. And I can only put that down to being strong. I think, yeah, being fit is very, very critical to how your body heals. So, yeah, back to the chemo. So the chemo, I think, was...
Just on the fitness,
Yeah.
were you able to maintain any level of fitness? Or if people are hearing this now and they're like, got the diagnosis,
Yeah.
but they haven't been trail running and doing things, they're just like, oh, well, thanks, Sam, but no, I can't do anything. And it's like John on the airplane.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to work for me. What are you able to do?
You are. So I think it's something that...
Walking or...
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Movement is what's important. It doesn't have to be extreme. It doesn't have to be gym. It doesn't have to be running. You know, do whatever you can do. I know at the time I spoke to somebody, a friend of my brother's, who'd been through chemo, and he had mentioned to me that he had continued to run through chemo. To me, that felt a little bit unnecessary and extreme, so I never attempted that level of exercise. I think I took it very gently. I think I did a bit of yoga. Oh, yes, of course I did. Yoga was pivotal in that journey. I found a lovely yoga teacher, Jodie Carlson, who... where I got into a very sort of gentle form of yoga, yin yoga, which I found was very, very supportive through the journey. So I think I did that twice, 3 times a week. Even post chemo, I would do it. And on days of chemo, I would do it also, as it would sort of like ground me and center my mind, etc. And then, yes, the walking. So that was a piece of advice I was given by this friend of my brother's was, you know, the day after chemo, you're going to feel like shit, but like get up and go for a walk. And that's what I did, and I made sure that I did that on every day post the chemo. The worst effects are usually the 72 hours, like 3 to 4 days post chemo. And then from there, you kind of get better again until the next cycle. So I was on a 3-week cycle, where I'd have an IV of something called oxaliplatin, which is quite harsh, once every 3 weeks. And then I would go on to an oral chemo, which... Also, at the time, I had no idea that there was an option of oral chemo. So I would take multiple tablets for 2 weeks, and then I'd have 1 week off. Luckily, the oral chemo didn't have many side effects for me. So my worst side effects would be those 3-4 days, and then I would kind of go back to normal until the next 3 weeks. And it didn't really get too much worse as I went on. I'd heard that sometimes the cumulative effect, you know, it catches up later. But I think whether I was lucky or whether it's down to, you know, fitness or my health prior to this, I never really battled too much with the chemo. I don't want to by any means make out like it was a walk in the park. It wasn't, but it was manageable, I think, is my point. People would see me out and about, and, you know, they just wouldn't believe that I was currently going through chemo. Yeah, and then finished the chemo.
Before you get there,
Yeah.
so I mean, yeah, we can. We don't have to spend too much time on the on exactly technical parts of it, but just to understand, did your mom come again?
She did, of course she did. Yes, yeah. So she came immediately. She was there for the surgery, and then she came for, I think, my first 2 rounds of chemo, and then when we all realized that I was able to sort of manage it, she didn't then come for every round. But yes, she was always there when I needed her. I remember there was one particular round, I think it was probably round 4 or something, where I had a very, probably like my most extreme reaction to the chemo. And my youngest, Kate, was sick at the time. And I just got home and I thought, like, there's no way that I can do this with a sick child. So I phoned my mom and I said, please, can you come? We'll book you a ticket. And like the next day she was on the plane and there she was to help. So, yeah.
Yeah,
it
well,
was
that's
really
why she's
great.
your incredible machine.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned she's an incredible machine. I just want to stick on it, but it's quite a big question. It's not one of the ones that we have scripted, but it's one that I've been wanting to ask. And that, so she is your incredible machine, and but time's short, and you know that. And so if this was the last day that you had, last time you got to speak to your mom, is there something that what would you say to her as like the last thing you were going to say to mom?
Sure, that's a big one. I think I would want her to know like how amazing she is as a person and how special she is, because she's the type of person that puts a lot on herself. So when things don't go right, let's just say, for example, Sam's engagement has failed, she'll say, what did I do wrong as a mother to, what did I do that made Sam make this decision that landed her up in this position, or whatever the case may be. So she takes a lot on herself. And I think she's done that throughout her life. So I think I would want her to know that, she's done everything right, and, and how amazing she has been in, supporting me every step of the way, etc.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful message.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay. And then, so anything else in the, so obviously you made the chemo, you didn't do radiation, am I right?
No radiation, no,
so
just chemo, yeah.
And success, I don't know if that it was successful. Is it like, how is it? Because when did you start blogging, and why did you start blogging, for instance, during this experience?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. Why did I? I think, oh, I do remember. So when I was first diagnosed, you obviously have a huge amount of questions that you want to ask, and I also wanted, so I wanted to speak to people and I wanted to know everything there is to know. I didn't want to go into it blindly, which is again what I find, everybody deals with things differently, but I do find that you get a type of person who blindly follows what the doctors are telling them. Whatever they say they must do, that's what they're going to do. I wanted to research and find out for myself. So, the first oncologist who'd seen me in hospital, she actually gave me a different course of action, and it was still chemo, but just a longer chemo and not the oral option. And there was something that I didn't like about her approach. I mean, I think she's a brilliant oncologist, can't take anything away from her, but I went into my first consult with a lot of questions around natural, like healing modalities that you could do with the chemo. Asked her about diet, asked her about exercise, etc. And she was just very dismissive of all of those type of things, as doctors often are.
Sometimes they can be.
But yeah, and then I'd asked her, one of the effects of this drug, oxaliplatin, is that you can have, forget what it's called now, but it's where like you would get tingling in your fingers, and it can get so bad that you actually eventually like can't use your fingers anymore. You can't button up a shirt, etc. So I'd asked her about this side effect, and again she was like, yeah, well, it's a side effect, but like deal with it type thing. So I just didn't like her approach, which led me to then seek out another oncologist, Dr. Spach, who I would love to give a shout out because he's a Polish doctor in Durban. Absolutely brilliant. I loved the first consult with him was chalk and cheese to what I'd experienced with the first oncologist. He's actually quite humorous in his approach, which I liked because I tend to use humor in dark situations. And he said, well, why are you here? You know what's going, like, you've been told, like what do you want from me type thing. And I explained to him, that I just had, felt that I wanted a second opinion. And then he did actually give me a shorter he basically said to me, by doing the oral combined with the IV, you can have an overall shorter chemo journey, but would be as effective as the 12 rounds that the previous doctor had wanted to do. And then every question that I had for him on the other side of things, whilst he probably had the same answer as what the first one did, in that, you know, he's in Western medicine, he doesn't really believe it's going to help, but he was open to it, you know. And when I asked him about intermittent fasting, for example, he's, oh, yes, and he pulls out his intermittent fasting app and, you know, talks about all the benefits of it and how he does it too. And when I asked him about I asked him about supplements, and then he told me, well, you know, you can get all those supplements in your smoothie, but like, by all means, if you want to take the supplements, take them, you know. So he humored me in some way, and he was, and like, open to it, and also extremely thorough. Spent an hour with us, showed us PowerPoint presentations of, explained everything. So I just really liked his approach. He would actually laugh at me when I came in to see him, because I do tend to worry about things. He would go, oh, it's my warrior. And then he would again say to the other people in the waiting room, look at this girl, what's she doing here? You know, she's healthy. What is she doing here? This is when post chemo, and when I was given my all clear, and like any little thing, and I would rush over there, and so he would laugh at me. And he also used to always say to me, just remember, what did he say? Something about, I'm going to forget the words now, but it was basically something like, you know, if you've got a pain in your stomach, it's not the cancer type thing, because once you've had a cancer diagnosis, anything that goes wrong in your body, the first thing you think is, this is the cancer. So now I'm getting my abnormal high heart rate. So
is it making you just talking about anything that can go wrong?
It must be. Yeah.
Just to not to labor it though, but the approaches of the doctors. Okay, so we've spoken about this quite a fair bit on the episode, the EQ versus the IQ, and we want doctors to have the highest IQ possible.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that often translates to a lower EQ than we used to, and but that's not what we're paying for them for. But it's nice when there is one that sounds like he has a fair bit.
Exactly.
And that's actually an incredible little find there and share. So definitely worth a shout out on the positivity that the others and this doctor seemed to. There's echo. It seemed like you like that more. You like that about him, but you have taken it in with him. But the other doctors, they don't give you the bad news because they don't know it yet. But you didn't like that didn't seem to like giving you a soft landing. I felt like you were like annoyed that they told you. It was like, why didn't they tell me that there could be the worst? If they told you, I imagine you would have gone to the worst. They could already sense that. I think that's what they do. They don't give you that worst. Like, it's going to be fine. Because if they don't tell you it's going to be fine, then it might. If they say it might not be fine, then you got to go explore and do all the work. And then it also might. Mind's a very powerful thing.
Yeah, exactly.
You might make it worse somehow, sort of thing.
No, I'm sure it is a big part of their strategy. I know with the oncologist, because Dr. Spuck, he was always very, again, positive about my long-term prognosis. And even when I did have the all clear, you know, he was convinced that it wasn't going to come back. And I used to wonder, is he just being so positive, you know, for my mental state? But I actually spoke then to another patient who was also a long-term patient of his. And she had said to me, Sam, no, the fact that he is positive, you take that as a positive, because if the situation's worse, you're going to know. You know, she said he certainly never gave me that, you know, that outlook. So I think he is also quite realistic, but I do know what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay, and then you've had a subsequent. Was there anything else you wanted to cover before? Now you've had the subsequent scare and removal. That's quite a shock, even to hear as well. Like we heard.
Massive shock, and I think in many ways the second cancer has jolted me more mentally, because, as I say, like, nobody thought it was coming back again, you know. I'd kind of gotten through it, and I was the success story. I had a chemo port. I don't know if you know what a chemo port is,
Yeah.
but others might not. But essentially, it's just a little incision that they make to put the port in so that you don't have to have it through your veins. And I actually, immediately after chemo had finished, I wanted to get the chemo port removed. And most people wouldn't do that because if you've had cancer, there is a strong likelihood it's going to return. So why remove the chemo port only to have to put it in a year later or whatever? But I was so convinced. And even, my oncologist was like, yeah, let's do it by all means. So, yeah, I certainly didn't think it was coming back. And then, and 5 years is the kind of the holy grail of time in the all clear. They say that once you hit the 5-year mark, your chances of getting cancer are then equal to everybody, to the general population.
Okay.
So I was on year 3 when I had the recurrence. So, and it was probably the first one of my investigations, because I would do these colonoscopies annually and then also have scans frequently, an annual PET scan, and then every 6 months just a normal ultrasound scan. So I just had all of the scans. Those were all clear, so at the beginning of the year, this was where we now, so it was last year. Beginning of last year, I had a clear PET scan. I think that was my 3rd clear PET scan. In the July, I'd done the ultrasounds where they look at the colon and everything else. That was all clear. In fact, it was like head to toe because I think I'd been experiencing headaches. So I'd said to them, please just also, do the CT scan. So head to toe, all clear. So then when I went in for that colonoscopy, it was in August last year, I walked into that room literally I just had something to tick off my list for the day. I was going to be in and out. I knew what to expect. I've come to enjoy the conscious sedation. That feeling as the drug goes in is pretty cool. It's only for a split second that you get to experience it. Quickly, I want to take you back to something. When I had the second, actually we're going forward, so we'll go there. So anyway, and then came out and, came around and he looked at me and he said, I'm really sorry, but we found another tumor. I was like, what the actual fuck? Excuse my language. It was the last thing that I expected, the absolute last thing. So I was in a state of absolute disbelief. I did at the time burst into tears because the immediate thing that I thought is, if I've had a recurrence, this is it. Because it's kind of like the normal path of cancer recurrence. You don't often hear of somebody with a recurrence who then goes on to make it. Yes, it happens. Of course it happens. Of course it does. I do know people who've had multiple cancers. But the general thought is if it comes back, it's worse, it's progressed, and, you're probably heading towards the end. But anyway, so then again, of course, at the time, you still don't know now, is the mass cancerous or isn't it? So now it's the same process all over again that I experienced the last time. Waiting for biopsy results, waiting for that phone call, having the surgery, which you have to have regardless of whether it's cancerous or not. So I knew there was another surgery on the way. Then I'd have to wait for the lymph nodes and all that sort of thing. So I knew exactly what was coming. And I also had no doubt in my mind when he said there was something that it was going to be cancerous. So Scott had said to me, well, don't stress too much. Maybe this is not cancerous. I was like, no, what are the chances? So a cancer patient having a benign tumor in their colon, I highly doubt it.
Just quickly on the waiting. So it sounds like there is a fair bit of waiting, and you seem like you're used to it. What do you do? Do you have any tricks to share?
Not really,
because
no.
time can dilate for people. It's
I think any cancer patient, I don't like using this word cancer patient, but you know what I mean. Anyone who's been through cancer will tell you that they call it Scanxiety. I don't really think there is anything you can do. Your mind is always going to go to the darkest place. Of course, you can try the breathing exercises and perspective and all of that kind of thing, but ultimately you're going to worry about it.
You just bare knuckle it, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. You just live with it. You deal with it.
Okay.
And I'm not one to just
white
wait.
Knuckled is the right phrase I was looking for. White knuckled ride. So you just don't. Okay, I need to go on retreat, or how do you pass the time? Is how I'm asking, because that can be the waiting is sometimes the most difficult thing on part. Am I right?
Yeah.
Not knowing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, all I could say I do tell myself is going back to Scott's bit of advice on, you can't control the future. You can only control what's going on right now. Oh, and also like we don't know yet what we don't know, So why worry about something that you don't know? And I guess that's something that I try to use. I did read a book on my first diagnosis. It's a long-term breast cancer. When I say she's not a survivor, she's got active cancer, but has had active cancer for 10 years and living with it, which is something that I feel more and more, people are doing. That's something I've realized. Cancer doesn't mean death, actually. I mean, of course, in some instances, but I know and have now spoken to so many people who do live with cancer. So it's just a chronic disease that you manage.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the benefit of how far medicine has come, is that it's not a death sentence anymore. But where
book.
were we?
You read the book.
Yes, the book. Her book is called My Guru Cancer.
Yeah.
She talks about how she uses it. Have you read it?
Well, I've still got it on Audible that you got.
Oh, yes, of course. And did you actually ever...
I've got it, but I haven't. It's on our
okay.
agency Audible.
Okay.
But because that was one of the versions you had, I think. I don't know if you got the physical
Yes.
book as well.
I did get the physical book as well.
Cool.
Yes, yeah. But anyway, she would talk about questions she would ask herself when she was waiting, and it was something like, or if she felt something, it was, do I believe this to be true? Can I be absolutely, absolutely certain this is true? And like, if the answer is no, then, which it always will be, then why worry about it? Because you don't know what's coming. But it's hard. Yeah, I mean, you try these different tactics, but like, you're going to worry. There's just no two ways about it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, next day got the call. Can I come in and see the doctor, which is my worst, because, of course, if they say, can you come in and see them, you already know. Like, can you not just tell me on the phone? Anyway, so luckily it's only a 5-minute drive to the surgeon who'd done the colonoscopy, and then he explained that, yes, unfortunately it is cancerous, same thing, same procedure as last time, etc. But what I did, I think, again, not many people would do, but I said, well, when can you do it? Like, talking of the waiting, I said, I cannot deal with the waiting. Like, when can you do this thing? And he said, well, actually, I've got a slot tomorrow afternoon. So I was like, okay, book
Let's
me
go.
in. So, yeah, in the space of, like I said, Sunday morning, 14K run, Tuesday, found a cancerous tumor, Wednesday, got the results. Thursday, I was in surgery. So it was all super quick, but I'm glad I did it that way. And the actual surgery experience was very different to the first one. I can't say what that was attributed to, maybe just different surgical procedures. I didn't have that funny thing in my neck. And ICU ward was wonderful. So I didn't actually have a bad experience with the surgery, even though it was exactly the same procedure. Yeah, and I kind of knew what to expect, but of course the waiting, I remember every morning they would come in and I would say, is the biopsy out? Is the biopsy out? It was again a weekend. So I think that impacts how quickly you get the results. So I got discharged very quickly. All the nurses and doctors were amazed. I was, I think, like 2 nights in ICU and then 2 nights in general, and then I was discharged and back home. One of the doctors, in fact, the oncologist that I was then now seeing in Somerset West, she hadn't been to see me, and when I got home on the Monday, she actually wrote to say, I came to see you, but I was shocked to hear that you'd already been discharged. So I think I was a bit of a wonder patient. And then the Monday I got discharged, that afternoon I got the call with the biopsy results that there was no lymph involvement. So that was just a massive relief, because that meant, like, the surgery was a cure in that instance. So
Perfect.
I don't have active cancer anymore. Of course, the biggest question and worry now is, why did it come back? And interestingly, they don't think it was a recurrence of the initial cancer.
Okay.
They think it was a completely new cancer. They can't be sure. You never can be. But why would a young, healthy person have 2 separate cancer incidences in 3 years, both in the colon, So it's a bit of a conundrum. Nobody can answer it. What they are doing now is increasing my colonoscopy surveillance to every 6 months instead of once a year.
Okay.
Because the other thing that was unusual was that all other tests were fine, but that's because none of the scans can actually see inside the colon.
Okay. And does that set you back to the 5-year mark now? Do you start
funny
again?
you should ask that, because that was my question as well. And did I get an answer on that question? I don't know if I've got that answer.
Well,
but it was
either way, you'll be
yes,
doing
it
the
was the
6
same
months.
question I have.
Yeah.
Is
Does
it
that put
like
me back to the thing?
Yeah.
Because that's what you think. I think people think
So
like,
I do have the answer.
yeah,
Sorry, I do have the answer. I know it because so on the original cancer, 5 years is still
running concurrent. Yeah,
running. So when I hit that, like
you clear on
I'm
that
clear
cancer.
on that. On this new one, because it was an early stage cancer, it's sort of got a different prognosis anyway, because a stage 1 that's surgically removed with no lymph involvement is a very positive
Okay.
prognosis. It's
Okay.
like 90% or whatever past that they call it. They always talk of everything in 5-year survival rate terms.
Okay.
So 90% of people with a stage 1, I think that's a stat, I stand to be corrected, are still around after 5 years. So that was like a less scary cancer, the second one.
Okay. And I think we're going to transition now. Is there anything else on the journey now that you've learned and want to share?
I would say one thing is, which is at the forefront of my mind all of the time, is this worry, or this, how can I say, conundrum in my mind of, did I change enough, and have I changed enough to prevent another cancer recurrence? Because when I was going through cancer, I did make a lot of lifestyle adjustments. I was never unhealthy to begin with, but, I know you talk a lot about your meditation, so I started meditating every day. The journaling that I started doing, which I realized I didn't answer you before as to why I did that, but I think it was therapeutic, really. Oh, and also wanting to help others who had been through the same and didn't feel they had anybody to talk to. Because for me, talking to people who'd been through the same gave me such a sense of comfort, because I didn't feel so isolated.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I wanted to share my journey, so that people would understand that it's not as bad as what you think it is. Because when you first, or it doesn't need, I can't say it's not as bad, it doesn't necessarily need to be as bad as what you think. And I think that's why I wanted to share all of the detail of my journey. But anyway, so back to the lifestyle changes. So, the fact that I chose to stop working because I knew what a sort of a stressful environment advertising is, and I very much believe that stress plays a big part in disease and the development of disease. So I told myself that I wasn't going to go back into that industry, and that I was going to sort of have a complete career shift. And at the time I thought, maybe the helping people with my story was something that I would do long term. But ultimately then you get better and life goes back to normal, and it's amazing how quickly you forget about what you've been through, and you just kind of, things like, should I be drinking alcohol? There's a lot of question marks around, well, not question marks, in fact, a lot of research that, out now about how bad alcohol is for you. So in a cancer patient specifically, I should be very much on the side of not drinking at all. And I'm not a big drinker by any means, but I do enjoy a glass of wine, a couple of glasses of wine, or whatever the case may be. And I still do it, I'd stopped doing it, but I quickly went back to, enjoying a couple of glasses with friends. I quickly went back to, not worrying about eating sugar. Of course, I'm still healthy. I still exercise. But again, I quickly went back into the same industry, which, which had caused me, I think advertising is a tough industry, as I've said, and it always created a lot of stress in my life. And I'm back in not advertising per se, but now software. I work for an international company who have developed an AI software that enables they create 3D renders of products and enable faster production of these
And it's
renders.
a marketing role.
It's a bit different.
Is
I'm a
it
delivery lead, so essentially I'm responsible for. We work on the Coca-Cola business, and I've got teams, project managers around the world,
Okay.
and I'm responsible for making sure that we deliver.
You get through the border without
Yeah,
the passport, without a passport sometimes.
Exactly.
Okay, so just before we get into the advertising, because we're going to get to your advert, there was one thing I wanted to ask, and it's just something I don't know if I'm sure you thought of, but like, when you were speaking, it was like that. I got that. I'm sure you must have heard this about a rocking chair. Worry being like a rocking chair.
Yeah.
It's something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You do worry a lot, and worry and stress, and stress is we know is a killer.
Yes.
And that's
100%.
Yeah. So you talk about diet and exercise and all this sort of stuff, but what do you do? You do the meditation, the journaling, maybe. What do you? Yeah.
I was going to say I've stopped that, which is where I get annoyed with myself because I'm like, why? I question myself, and am I taking things seriously enough? You know, surely you would think to yourself, surely somebody who's had cancer now twice would catch a wake up and stop doing the things that they know cause them stress.
Okay. But my question is, even if you stop that stuff for a while and like generally you have very healthy, have you changed your mind? Have you been able to change your mind? Like you mentioned the plane earlier. You mentioned those levels of stress or that angst that you get, that time you spend in a rocking chair, has that changed at all?
No, it hasn't. It's something that I work through a lot with my psychologist. I did start seeing somebody when I was diagnosed, against my will, because I've never had much faith from what I knew about psychology, but actually now I just find it to be such a useful tool. I hardly ever talk about my cancer, but I use it as like a self-development tool. So
yeah, it's such a gift.
Yeah.
So when you open it, because I also had, like, I was very negative about psychologists, and then eventually I realized I had another brain in the room that could work on me. It was so amazing.
Exactly.
The one thing I did, and you reminded me of my psychologist, she said to me at one stage was that, like, it's way easier to go back to the way you were than stay the way you have become. So if you've changed something, if you've got new neural pathways, you do something, the relapses are way easier. So even if you started a practice or you started something, it's actually easier to just go back and go back into the same paths and all that sort of stuff. So it's something to be aware of. And just the interesting you said the psychology, because they'll help you with the worry.
Yes.
But you've gone back into it doesn't sound like advertising. We're going to transition to the ads, because we do still love advertising and marketing and stuff, and that's what we talk about.
Yeah.
And we talked about your ad. The team have done. We've presented this ad before, by the way, but it's one of those ones everyone needs to know about if they don't know about it already.
Yes.
So beat the Benz.
Yeah. Has somebody else referenced it on your show?
Yes. But there've been multiple references of different ads now.
Okay.
And Beat the Benz is going to be one that comes. If it's your favorite, it's your favorite. So it doesn't really matter. The episode is yours.
Yes.
So it looks like the guys have got this. I stand to be corrected, and if I am incorrect in any of our information here, because I didn't know this, I was actually at TBW Hunt Lascaris in Durban. That this is a Hunt Lascaris ad. It didn't receive any awards. I think it was because it was pulled. We can get into that. It's one of the earliest and most cited examples of direct comparative advertising in South Africa, something we're not allowed to do.
Yes, exactly.
It was ultimately withdrawn because of advertising regulations in South Africa. But why did you pick this ad?
I think just the cleverness of it. You know, I think one of the reasons why I got into advertising in the first place is I love that sort of traditional, conceptual, thinking process, and then seeing how that, comes to life, and how does the advertiser meet the objective of communicating the product intrinsic, which in this case is the performance of the BMW, and still, hit some kind of emotional chord. I guess this isn't emotional as such in that sense, but, it's clever, so the audience is immediately going to say, oh, that's clever, and I think just the fact that they so cleverly were able to have that stab at Mercedes-Benz without actually directly saying we are better than a Mercedes-Benz, because it was BMW beats the Benz and they are on Chapman's Peak driving, through the Benz. So, I just like
so for the
it's
audience,
just the clever conceptual thinking behind it.
People haven't seen it, then just correct me if I'm wrong here. So the original ad that came out was a Mercedes-Benz ad on Chapman's Peak.
Yes.
And it shows and it's a real story, happened.
Mm-hmm.
The car rolled down the cliff. It's not even an embankment. It's like ridiculous. And they created an ad out of the experience because, it was a longer piece, but they created, as I understand it, because the survivor, it was newspaper articles.
Yes.
The person survived the fall, and there's actual on the internet. You can go. We'll have links in the show notes to it, but you can go and see that it's obviously very old footage now and stuff, but it shows you this a ridiculous fall, and that there was a survivor, and it was showing you how safe this car was and what incredible this car was, and the features of that. And then the ad we're about to play now, but people listening won't know it, but you can just imagine it's the same. It looks like identical in setup of the Mercedes ad.
Yes.
And it's Chapman's Peak. It's the bends of the roads from a first-person view.
Yes.
And they're driving through, and then they go past that same bend, and then it carries on going.
Yeah.
And that's the ad. It's just, it doesn't go off the cliff.
Yes.
And then it says, we beat the bends.
Yeah.
And it's so clever because it's obviously a play on the bends, the words,
exactly.
all the turns and the corners and that sort of stuff, as well as their biggest competitor, Mercedes-Benz, in the same setting. Just excellently done. And one of those ones where it's so famous, even though the airtime, they probably spent, I didn't even know what. It would be interesting to go look at the case studies on what they spent in comparison to anyone else at the time to get the amount of talkability that they did. And it wasn't social media or digital at the time.
Exactly.
And it's still being spoken about.
Exactly.
And it's already been referenced by at least one guest, possibly two, before you.
And
yeah?
Just to that point, I mean, I didn't actually think of that until you said it, but it is just so, relevant. There was no social media. So for something to have had such an impact, and I think that talks to the cleverness of the thinking. The fact that you didn't need huge amounts of repetition to get the message, which one usually does. And the fact that there was nothing to make it go viral, but people are still talking about it today, just talks to the brilliance of the thinking behind it.
Okay, so we'll press play on that now.
Doesn't it make sense to drive a luxury sedan that beats the Benz?
Just to cut, so I love that ad. We'll have it in the show notes for everyone to reference, and especially students studying advertising or marketing. Yeah, go look at those heritage and like brilliant piece of South African creative. And we are one of the most creative countries in the world and creative nations, and multiple reasons for that. And I know I'm obviously biased, but it's also true.
Yeah.
The first rule is tell the truth, or at least don't lie. So I'm pretty confident I'm not lying there.
I actually heard you say in your interview with Rich Mulholland, you said that you hate, what did you say? I actively... something about
I've got a love-hate relationship with advertising.
Okay,
Yeah. There's that beautiful quote from Fight Club. It's like it has us chasing cars and stuff we don't need.
Yeah,
So there is this love-hate relationship that
Yes.
like I have with it, because I love the cleverness of that.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
But I don't like being interrupted
Okay, yeah.
in my experiences. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of the advertising we sit with in social platforms, they brought to us by. And the squeeze backs, when I was at Hunter Scarus, actually, where I worked at TV the other day, they presented a squeeze back. It was the first time I'd been introduced to it. I think it was, they sponsor Spa sponsors Wimbledon. And a squeeze back, you know what a squeeze back is for the
Yes,
audience. It's when your screen goes a lot smaller and there's advertising to the generally around the borders of your screen. And it happens. And the team there, they were just so happy with themselves. They presented the squeeze back of, they said they're going to be feet in the screen and in front of you, so it's going to be like looking like you've got your feet out on screen, and it'll have a display of Tops or Spa or whatever it was, their thing. Nothing against the brand, I love those brands, but I'm more having a crack at the creative team and I was like, no, you can't be serious. You're doing a squeeze back. Like, why are we still doing this?
Yeah.
Why are we still doing a squeeze back? And during tennis is like the smallest ball that we play. One of them, that in golf, and people are trying to focus on where that ball is, and you're making the screen smaller. No, please stop. Stop interrupting my experience. So when it's not, when it's entertaining,
Yes.
then it then it has a longer lifespan in my life, and I enjoy it. So
true.
I have a love-hate relationship with it. But
yeah.
I mean, I did some of the first actual, as an agency, worked on TV commercials was with you. We did Aquila in PE and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Your quotes, you've had quotes now already, but just to go
Yes.
to, I laughed so hard at this. If you don't,
Please don't tell anybody. About
do which one?
Mahatma Gandhi.
It's attributed to Mahatma Gandhi.
Ask ChatGPT.
If you don't ask, you don't get. Mahatma Gandhi. It's got to be someone that said it, but
can you please just go to ChatGPT and say who? That's what I did, because so I knew that I liked the quote, "If you don't ask, you don't get." I mean, whether it's, I don't know if it's a quote or what it is, but you said something that keeps coming up, and it's another thing in my life. It's always been a mantra of mine: is if you don't ask, you don't get. So I did want to know who said it.
Yeah.
So what does one do when you want some information? Went to ChatGPT and I said, who coined the quote, "If you don't ask, you don't get," and it tells you Mahatma Gandhi, but then goes on to say that it's often attributed to him, but incorrectly so.
Okay.
Why it's attributed to him, I don't know, but that is pretty funny.
Okay.
I almost deleted the message after I sent it to you because I thought, God, what an idiot.
Yeah, okay. And then the other one is, this too shall pass.
Yes, yeah.
So why?
That one, a lot deeper meaning behind that one, I suppose, talks very much to my cancer experience. Because when you're in something at the time, whatever it may be, whether it's cancer, whether it's a stressful situation at work, I've just been through a pretty stressful situation where I felt that my sort of character was being questioned, and I got very sort of irate about it. But yeah, whatever you're going through, you are going to get through it, some way or other, whether it's a negative outcome or a positive outcome, that moment is going to pass. So it's something that I often try and tell myself. And I use it a lot for perspective. I think that's also one of the things that's helped me the most on my journey, is when I do worry about, what if I die from cancer? The perspective that I give myself is none of us is promised tomorrow. So yes, I've got a higher statistical rate maybe than the next person, that I might die younger. But any of us can walk out of this room right now and be hit by a car. So nobody's promised tomorrow. So it's that perspective that helps me get through things. And I think, that's linked to that, this too shall pass.
Love it. Anything I haven't asked you that I should have asked you, Sam?
Don't think so, no.
We went quite deep. It's so good.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing so much with us and going deep with us. Is there anything you want to close with?
I think what I would love to say, I think it's quite profound in a way. When we started this discussion, you said to me, you do know that I'm trying to sell you on the idea of podcasts and that you should have a podcast. And I speak about the time when I'd stopped working, and in my mind felt that I was going to have this, significant shift in what, my purpose and my career. And I very much wanted to use my experience in some way, to as a means of income in the future. So, I had ambitions of motivational, speaking for corporates, sharing my journey, also just the practical tools and how I sort of dealt with a very difficult situation, the desire to help others who was going through the same. I'd wanted to turn that into something. And I think I started talking about it earlier and then we got sidetracked. But ultimately why I didn't do that is because it felt easier and safer to do what I know. Of course, financial, your income has to come into it. I wish I was in a position where I wasn't reliant on the income that I have, but we are reliant on it. And it almost felt like it would be more stressful to try something new. Even though that something new to me had a much bigger purpose, it didn't warrant the stress that it would mean in trying to, monetize that thing. And then the fact that, you invited me onto this show because you believed I had a story to tell, unbeknownst to me, I just, I said to you, I thought you just wanted to interview me because I was cool, means that...
It's part of it.
Yeah. But I mean, this could be, who knows, this might be a platform for me to actually do just that. So I thought that was quite profound. So yeah, I guess maybe just a message out there is that if there is anybody who's recently been diagnosed, wants somebody to talk to, wants some advice, I'd be more than happy to support that person, even if it's, I think one of the things I said when I started my blog is if I help just one person on their journey, it would be worth it. So yeah, I think that's a message I'd like to put out there.
Well, thanks so much. The incredible
Thank you.
Sam Edwards.